Yo, what's good, everybody? Good morning from sunny and rainy Costa Rica. I am Joey J. Ping here of Respect My Region, and we today have another episode of the Respect My Region podcast. I'm joined by my very special guest, Terrence White. He's the CEO and founder of Monko, which is uh, arguably probably the most luxurious cannabis brand there in Washington, D.C. You're leading the way there in the nation's capital, black owned business. Social equity history. You're doing a lot to inspire others. Terrence, how have you been? How has 2025 been treating you so far?
Well, so far so good in terms of, things and, business has been different.
Mhm.
We went from the I-71 or gifting market to the medical market, and we're trying to figure it out. There's always challenges and hurdles to cross, but with that respect, you're only good as your team and the things that you can do, and so we're doing everything we can do right now, in order to take on this medical market and its challenges. So I would say, ask me this question in December.
I love that. I love that. I love that. No, and that's it's an honest perspective. That's an honest take, right? Is you're going through major changes. Some would say turbulent. It's in cannabis, a word that we hear all the time, Terrence, is volatile, right? And
Right.
this change in cannabis can both be expensive, it can be timely, it can cause stress and frustration. Terrence, what have you enjoyed though, switching over to this new style of market? I mean, gifting and all that. Now, I mean, you're a retailer, beautiful location, primed and ready for standard retail operations. Was that gifting model suited for you, or is this medical model better suited, or what are your
Well,
thoughts on
I mean, I think, so it's a double-edged sword.
that?
The gifting model, what I enjoyed about it is we had better brands, better products, which also led to better ATV. Also, just the whole recreational and gifting, where that was the biggest thing, where people come in and just show their ID and was able to go through and get a great experience. We still offer that same great experience, but the challenges have been now, with Doge and going into a database, the lack of footsteps, the challenges of lack of product. We have about seven cultivators and manufacturers, total right now.
In that medical market. So
Yes.
you started back over. You went from being like
Mhm.
we're teenagers in this gifting model to now we're kids again, and we don't even
Well,
have pets going
we went from full adults back to being rebirth. I wouldn't say the teenager thing. I mean, to be
Wow.
honest with you, we had that packed in terms of just, our standard operations and procedures, the things that we were doing, that, allowed us to be successful. And I believe that we will be successful. Again, we are successful, but, from a financial standpoint, it's just getting back to those
Yeah.
results. And that's the key, understanding how to fix the problem, and um, and pivot from, cannabis is where you got to pivot every day. You talked about
Yeah.
volatility, which is
We got
so
to just win
true.
the day, right? They talk about sports,
Yeah.
right, Terrence? Just win the day. Just win the day.
Yeah, well, the thing is you got to tackle and block, and that's, I'm a football player, ex-football player. If you don't tackle and you don't block, you don't win the game. Bottom
Yeah,
line,
fundamental.
and those are fundamental things. And so right now we're trying to figure out this market and understanding the fundamentals, the do's and don'ts, based on what this market gives you, and every cannabis market is different. Unfortunately, we don't have these national brands in DC.
Oh, folks, we got.
Um,
Oh, there we go.
you know, Important or pivotal in our success before,
Hmm.
because wows and stizzies and things like that. people come to see you just because they know the brand and
Yeah.
they understand that you sell it. They understand that you got connected flour and things like that. Where now I'm having to basically be the distro and marketing and marketing ambassador for the local cultivator because they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
So it's re-educating people, it's retooling staff, it's giving bringing customer integrity, customer education, and customer loyalty, and showing that we have these brands here that are are good brands. They just don't have the notoriety, and that takes some time for people to um, gain that confidence. As you know, cannabis
Yeah.
is a confidence thing. If you don't trust the brands,
It's a you got to
nine times
trust.
out
You
of
got to have
ten,
confidence in what you're buying.
you're not gonna use them.
It's a
So,
unique situation, Terrence, because you got to have.
there's been some headwinds, but we'll get through them. We'll get through them.
I I love that. I love that for you guys. And the part of this thing, whole thing is just
Joy,
recognizing that. Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
that's what I wanted to use my laptop.
Hello. 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 Can you hear
He's
me?
stuck.
Hello.
Yeah, he's
All right,
stuck.
folks. I don't know what's going on. We might have some minor technical difficulties here. In this instance, I always like to just restart. So one second.
Joy,
Terry,
yeah,
can you hear me now?
yeah, I can hear you. I think it may be
There we go.
where you are.
Ah,
Yeah, I think it's where you are, and that's I'm and
are we lagging or what are you dealing with? You can't see me?
no, I can see you. Can you see me?
I can. Yeah, everything's perfect on my end.
Yeah, you just got stuck before, and I couldn't hear you.
That,
Like,
that's okay. It is a little warm where I'm at, so my computer could be overstarting. So with that said, folks, let me go ahead and just apologize. Little technical difficulties, as I said. We're still banging out and trying out this new podcast location here in Costa Rica, trying to get the Wi-Fi and all that down. Terrace, I thought you had some really interesting points there. 7 cultivators available. Are there other gummy brands and vape brands available, or is just the cultivation,
so
or is your
those are
whole menu
cultivate.
depleted then?
That's yeah, that's cultivators and manufacturers. So you have
Holy
one.
cow!
So you got one, two, three. You got three cultivators, and you have out of the three cultivators, two manufacturers do some type of vapes or gummies or edibles, excuse me. And then you have another four. Um, One particular manufacturer does all shadow,
Mhm.
wax, and then the other three are two are vapes. One is vapes, and the other two are edibles.
So these and
So
these are no longer brands that like people are super recognized or huge brands available. That like these are just not to say just
the
Washington D.C.
so
brands.
the one of the cultivators does have a license agreement with cookies, but that's cookies are not cookies from 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
So the reality of the matter is that we're still trying to bring the national brands in. And I think white labeling is great. I'm a component of white labeling, but I'm also know that in every new market you do need some national brands with the white labels,
yeah.
because then that's the white labels drive people to your establishment. Once you got them there, you can switch them over to, I mean, the national labels drive people to your establishment. Once you get them there, you can switch them over to the white label brands.
Hmm.
And so therefore that's what it is.
That makes sense. The I've heard a lot over the years about
You
how.
there?
Oh, yep. Can you hear
Man,
me?
I don't know what the hell's going on.
Folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here again. Seems that when can you hear me now?
I get stuck.
Oh man.
Yeah, he dropped again.
Yo, Terrence, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's the phone.
Can you do me? Are you on Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I am.
Can you put your phone on Do Not Disturb? I think every time you get a message or switch away, it does
Hold on. Yeah,
it does cause a lot
let me
like this
put my
right now.
phone on.
Folks, this is a great conversation, though. Even though we're having technical difficulties, it's important to understand that Washington, D.C.'s market is different than the rest of the country, right? Washington, D.C. is not a state. And so, therefore, it has different federal rules. Not to say like different altogether, but in terms of cannabis, definitely different than some of the other areas. Some would say that it's a little bit more behind in terms of a gifting program versus a medical versus many people being adult use. But I think this is important to understand that it's fair for every area, every place to operate at its own pace. I think that's something that's super important is we want to let the people in each of these areas vote and pick and choose what they believe is best for their communities. And that's something that's super important. So maybe it takes a little bit longer in certain areas. There's definitely places in California and in Washington where I live and where I'm from in Washington that voted against cannabis and are just now getting a part of all that fun. Terrence, can you hear me okay? You see me all right?
Yeah, so I did put the phone on do not disturb, so I didn't do that before. So my apologies,
You all good. You
folks.
all good. I
Yeah,
had a feeling that tends to be one of the things that if I fail to mention it and it happens a couple of times, usually that's the case. So I take responsibility for that. My bad, folks. Bad preparation. I hadn't hit the joint yet. Now, Terrence, the seven different cultivators and manufacturers. You got cookies there with a white label deal going through somebody because that's what they do, right? That's how they work if they're outside of Cali. Um, and then we've got these different groups. So your menu has been, for lack of a better word, obliterated from what it used to be to what
yeah,
it is today. For you to be
that's
compliant and maintain this legal status in medical, you have to work with the compliant operators that are manufacturing and cultivating things.
absolutely. And and so metric. We use metric here in the district. So
Yep.
if it's not, if they're not a licensed cultivator or manufacturer, we can't use them. And so, therefore, there's been challenges. And I keep saying that word, and you'll keep hearing that word. But I think the biggest thing right now is just figuring out, look, what works, what doesn't work, what brands,
Hmm.
and the thing is, our biggest thing is right now is how to increase footsteps, how to
Yep.
increase brand loyalty, and understanding that prior to this, I had 24,000 customers, right? In the I-71 or gifting space. Some came back, most didn't. Um, and so,
They were like, man, we're just gonna start buying from our dealer again or whoever's got it now or something.
yeah, or they'll find another illicit person that they can buy, those brands, or to go to Maryland, which is recreational, which they don't have to go into a database. I think the biggest thing is right now is understanding that a couple of things. We have to get that customer back. And one of the things that we're doing is understanding that DC is no tax. So you get a medical card here. If you have a medical card, we do reciprocity anywhere in the country. We accept that card. You come
Dope.
in, you're just paying a 6% sales tax versus a 9%, 12% tax, and with that you would pay in Maryland. The biggest thing is and now and we had the first 90 days. We've had challenges in terms of DC just having so many people come online. So it had some computer lagging and things of getting that medical card back. Say once you, so we've gotten it down now, 5 to 7 minutes tops. You come in, you register, you register. You once that they send you a confirmation, then they'll send you the actual temp card.
Simple as
Um,
that.
s- yeah, so simple as that. You self-certify, so there's no doctor needed, no nurse needed, anyone. You're just basically filling out a form, basically say you agree to the terms and conditions under the District of Columbia. You're protected by HIPAA, which will allow your information to be protected from Doge or any other federal entity. The only way that your information can be divulged is by court order, which a lot of people don't understand that they still feel their job is in jeopardy. If you do carry a license or you're a concealed carrier, um, if you look at your concealed permit, on it, it says, "Are you buying cannabis illegal?" In a medical market, you're no longer buying cannabis illegal. Cannabis
Yeah.
is legal. So you do not fall under that. So you can get a medical card and own a concealed carrying permit. So I
Is that
think,
one of those things too, where it probably also goes to just maybe not mention that and just answer it the way you're mentioning, but also just not talk word outwardly about it, just like at the banks, Wells Fargo, and all these other places like that kind of stuff anymore?
well, I think the biggest thing is that when people have concerns, you have to address their concerns. It's a
Yeah,
case by case scenario,
yeah,
but people need to know this because that's their hang up of actually getting a medical card.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Especially when you're a single mother, you're living in a district, or you're a single woman, or even anyone that wants to carry
It's
a
America,
weapon.
man. If you want a
It's
weapon, get a weapon. If
yeah, and no one wants you to lose your Second Amendment rights.
yeah,
But also we want to educate you enough to understand what the ifs and the whys.
yeah.
And with that being said, this is very important. So we have work to do in the district. We got a lot of work to do. Again, I'm able to see the tree leaves or tea leaves, as they say, shaking, some good, some bad, some indifferent. But we're gonna take the good with the bad and the bad with the good, and we'll make it work.
That's
Um,
some major changes you guys have been going through, man. To have a way of doing business and then a whole new infrastructure put into place. You're illegal if you don't follow it to a T. You're legal if you do. But being legal costs you customers and revenue at this point because the market's just not where it's at or where it was in terms of medical card holders. Which it's troublesome, man, and it's frustrating. Because, and as I was alluding to, when we were having a little bit of that technical difficulty time, it's almost like it's a little bit behind the times in terms of going from the gifting to this now. It's like, why haven't we gone, like, you already got recreational states around you. It's generally historically a pretty progressive thing to do cannabis legislation. It was like, why have we let it go this way for this long? And I also, you've mentioned Doge on this episode twice. It seems that that's not just some media scare. That's a real reality, and it has had actual impact on your business there in terms of customers. And I think you were kind of alluding to like less customers because is there less employees around you, less people around you now?
Yeah,
There.
well, I mean, we've had to cut some fat, man. We're down 250% a month,
Wow.
coming. And so you have to cut some fat, and unfortunately, still keep good people around you that can do the job. I will tell you, this has been a learning experience from everybody involved. And I think, the district as a whole right now, we're trying to brace ourselves to, this new administration and the way that they do business, and DOJ and all the things that affect DC, because DC is not a state. And
Yeah.
DC, each administration in the way that they legislate makes a difference. And the way that the council and the mayor reacts to certain, especially the cannabis industry. We're in a very volatile industry, as you say, temperament business, in terms of the industry. So we have to be more careful. And I think, our politicians here have been, um, pretty much mute in terms of their positions since the Trump administration has taken over. So it's been definitely a different climate
Yeah.
uh, to say.
A lot of we go back to that word volatility, challenges, some of these keywords of today's episode, and it's something that we hear. Like I said, we hear often in cannabis, but it feels like there's greater, deeper impact at this point in some of these challenges. There's greater, deeper impact with some of this economical climate, with some of the worldly climate going on, and the actual local impact of that for you. Of less people on the hill, less people in those areas for you guys equals less foot traffic, equals less physical visitors, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, we're expecting probably a 30% decrease in tourism, and then so and then who's coming to the city are those people connoisseurs, and so you got to ask yourself, we'll probably still see anywhere between 13 and 15 million visitors this year. But the thing is how do you tap into that? How do you expand your brand to let them know that it's safe,
Yeah,
that you're still going to get the experience? And I think that's what we're figuring out right now. And like I said, ask me the question in December, because
yeah.
right now it's TBD. But in
We're 90 days since April 1st, brother. Right now,
yeah,
like, so this is
yeah,
a great time to have checked in with
yeah,
all of these major changes, whether it is the administration or whether it's just all these different other variables and factors. I mean, even whether it was Trump's administration or not, you're still going medical April 1st, and that sounds like it's been quite its own
yeah.
situation of its own to
I,
begin
I
with.
think, but I think if it was the other way around, that this administration had it been the Harris administration, I think that things would have been a little more quieter, and things
Yeah,
people would have been still comfortable with doing business status quo, and I think that's just my personal reality. This administration has put DC on notice, in terms of there's something called home rule in DC where administration Congress has the right to take over all financial legislations and any other thing in DC in terms of the decisions that are made for the day to day of the city. And so the city has been pretty much put on notice, that that could possibly happen under this administration. So I think there's been some fear there, in terms of just the city not wanting to, the mayor and council wanting to lose their power or powers, to Congress and the current administration, president administration. So, again, this is um, a different model for us, a
mhm,
different administration for us. But you know, we're figuring it out,
yeah,
and I think this was something that was going to take 6 months to figure out. First of all, we had to figure out the first 90 days, what works, what doesn't work, and then figure out, um, you know, what the customer likes from these brands. Now that we are in that, what I've done is brought in a consultant, a fresh new pair of eyes, ears, thoughts, um, that with things that were working, how do we bridge things together so we can get on that fast track to success again?
yeah. The one thing about you, Terrence, that I'm extremely confident in, based on all the stories that I've heard, the things that I've read, the conversations that we've had, is that you're going to be able to overcome this adversity, no matter what the challengers are presenting.
Hey, from your mouth to God's ears, brother. And
Come on.
that's my prayer. That we will be able to overcome and be victorious. Again, it comes down to who's going to block and who's going to tackle.
Yeah.
And if you want to go and I'm a football player, but if you think from a basketball analogy, who's going to do all the dirty work? who's going to dive on the floor to get
We
that
need
loose
some dogs.
ball.
We need some
Yeah,
dogs.
you gotta have a bunch of dogs, and you gotta have a bunch of people you can trust in this fight. So the reality of the matter is that that's where we are right now. We gotta have um we gotta have wolves in this fight.
Yeah,
And the dogs are it's good to have a dog, but you gotta have a couple wolves. And that's the reality of it.
yeah.
So but I do appreciate, Joey, the opportunity to come in and talk to you again, and share what's going on in the nation's capital.
I think it's incredibly important. There are I mean, bad news, good news, change, wars, uh, things going on in our own country. There's just a lot happening all the time, regardless of if it's good or bad, right? And it's important for all the states and the people in the cannabis industry across the nation to really have a better perspective across the different states and across your guys' district. I think it's incredibly important to be able to get this balanced views, to get a fair perspective across what's going on and how things actually are impacting each other. There's a lot of differences here across our country. There's a lot of volatility outside of cannabis, and there's a lot in our industry. And it's nice to be able to hear you. Uh, we saw some progress with the gifting to the medical. One day that'll become rec. And there'll be more and more changes and a different set of challenges around that time, as there is always. 3 or 4 years into the wreck, there'll be a giant oversupply of a bunch of shit, and then everything's going to crash. Happens everywhere, and so we're always going to be overcoming these. They're at this point they're predictable to some degree, but that doesn't make them any less difficult to overcome on the day to day.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the nature of being an entrepreneur and being in business. You got to understand how to pivot and how to forecast. And the biggest thing is you're only good as your people. At the end of the day, is if you got the right set of people, regardless of what storm you go through, you can get out of the storm. It's about surrounding yourself with knowledgeable, trustworthy, and you know those type people. And if they're knowledgeable and they're trustworthy, that's the foundation you need. You can build from there.
Absolutely, I think building recruiting solves everything is what was taught to me by my mentor, and that's something that I've tried to keep around and keep instilled in the RMR culture in my life. And the finding the right type of people is ultimately what's really important. I know we talked a lot about Monko last time, and this time was a lot about the marketing update, and that's really what I wanted to chat about is what's going on latest there in DC, especially with all this change. Even today, we just had, I believe, Trump's big beautiful bill or whatever decided to go past. Is what I read before I got on the podcast. So more changes to come, I'm sure, over time. But Terrence, before we get you out of here, I just want to do two things. One, I got to shout out my sponsor. Shout out to Blackleaf for giving us the opportunity and the platform to do this. Blackleaf.io for all things text messaging and cannabis compliance. They do a really great job, folks, of SMS marketing with no contracts or commitments, as low as 1 cent per SMS. And so, all you retailers out there, something to really think about in terms of creating more loyalty and more revenue there. Now, last question for you, Terrence. We just had 420 happen. We just had Cinco. We had Memorial. We have July 4th coming up. You're in the nation's capital. How are you guys celebrating July 4th? How crazy or not crazy is it going to be there for
You
our nation?
don't really know. Here's the thing. That because of this administration, things in the district have been so much summer than before. In terms of just the energy in the city is just not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a feeling that a lot of people, and based on last month's numbers, a lot of people have gone, are getting out of town for the summer. So I don't know what type of, you know, eh,
That's the energy right now. We're heading
yeah,
out. We're getting out of Dodge.
yeah.
We're getting out of Doge,
So
as they say.
yeah, a lot of people, have decided maybe they're leaving for the summer, Marcus Vineyard or the Hamptons or whatever the case may be, or just traveling in general, but you just never know what the tourists, the thing is like DC has 800,000 people, give or take. that live in the city. It's an 8.8 square mile city. We're surrounded by Maryland and Virginia, which gives us about another 17, 18 million people. Maryland has 6.8 million, Virginia, almost 19 million. Virginia has over 11 million people that live in the state. So that gives, you just never know. The fireworks typically bring people into the city. But in terms of what people are doing this weekend, I think a lot of people are just chilling. Um,
Yeah.
so I think,
We're trying to chill, be stress free, relax, escape some of this drama that's going on.
yeah. And then I know we got next week 7/10s coming up. So
Hmm.
um, DC is not a big concentrate city, though. You would think it would be with all the apartments and the condos, but DC is a flower city.
Okay.
So
Do you
um,
guys have all those other products yet? Do you have all the
Yeah,
products?
we have shadow and butter and some things concentrates but it's just not something that you would think in this area with all the apartments
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
all the condos
It hasn't hit yet.
hasn't hit. People are they'll do edibles and because you can walk down the street and smoke a J or find a rooftop to smoke on. People tend to go that way. So
Yeah.
it hasn't hit
Interesting.
this market like some other markets.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Well, there's a lot of growth to be had, and now with you guys, as you said, this is the rebirth here of the Washington D.C. Uh, medical cannabis market. We went from a gifting program with a unique set of rules to now we've got a medical program with a unique set of rules, more licensing, more metric, less brands until more people get licensed and get up and running. And you guys having to slowly and steadily continue to build your community, get your foot traffic back up, and just we have to weather the storm that is what's going on with whatever administration is in office doing their thing.
Absolutely, and
Storms the weather.
it's always going to be um,
Every 4 years, it's gonna be something.
it's going to be something. But remember one thing with Monco, community is currency.
Yep.
It will always be flower to the people. I'm always going to advocate. And it's always going to be luxury with a purpose.
Yeah.
That's what we stand on. And the experience is everything. We're going to fight for the cannabis industry, and that's flower to the people. And I believe that our community is currency. And not necessarily, it's not always boiled down to monetary, because capital, whether it's political capital or financial capital or just personal brand capital, that's what needed to grow and make a business successful.
Yeah. I was just thinking, as you were saying that, a thought hit me, and I'm thinking to myself, there's only so many brands across the country that I think about as staples for their area or their regions, and you consistently say those phrases of what you just said, of what you guys represent, what your business stands for, what you guys stand on, and I think of a couple other people across the country that their business emulates that as well. And I just want to read for the people watching. Monko's website says we are more than just a Monko dispensary or Monko dispensaries. We are a community hub dedicated to providing access to safe and high quality cannabis products. Now, when you read that, you might just think, oh, da, 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 community hub, whatever. But when I think about community hub, I think about resources. I think about YMCA's. I think about places where people have fun and come together, and where they learn and grow. And so I love that about Monko, and I love that about how you represent yourself in our nation's capital. And I look forward to the day that I get to come out there, my man. And so for all of you guys out there watching, make sure you guys visit 444 K Street, Northwest Washington, D.C., United States. You guys are how many blocks away from the White House? Like
About 10,
it's
about
like
10
eight,
blocks.
10 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
about 10 blocks.
like,
Yep.
you guys can, some of those aerial views of the White House, you can damn near see Monko's building off in the background, depending on the view. That's how close they are, guys. And so it's an experience in its own. And now that they've got medical cannabis with reciprocity from your state, I have a medical card. I can go there from California and go stop in and pull up and try it. So what an experience that will be. Terrence, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you joining
Enjoy.
me today, as
Hey
always.
man, thanks. Enjoy beautiful Costa Rica. Enjoy your fourth. And looking forward to seeing all the big things you're doing. I keep my ears to the ground. Keep up the good work. And as always, I'm always a call away if you need me, brother.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you so much. Be sure to tap in with Monko there in Washington, D.C., folks. I'm Joey J. Ping. This is Terrence White. Today's episode brought to you guys by